All right, it is 4 past the hour, so I think we'll get started. I am gonna promote folks to panelists just so that we can all see each other and interact a little bit more naturally. Just two things to note, as I mentioned before, this is being recorded and it will be posted to our YouTube channel. So if you would prefer your face not be on that recording, you're welcome to leave your camera off, although of course we invite you to turn your camera on if you feel comfortable with that. And then the other thing is that this, like all Code for America events, adheres to our code of conduct, which you can find at, I believe it is here, c4a.me/COC, which I can post a link to that in a moment. Basically, be kind to each other, be respectful of each other, and we'll all get along just fine. So I will start promoting people to panelists. Maybe while I'm doing that, I can ask our 3 NAC members to introduce themselves, and we can go in the order they are on my screen. So we'll go Bonnie, then Em, then Thad.
Hi, I'm Bonnie. I'm the Brigade Captain of Hack Relay and a member of NAC. And I'm gonna, I don't know who you were saying was next.
Em, but I think that they just went to get their food out of the oven. So how about you, Thad?
Sure. I'm Thad Koreski. I'm on the core team at Code for Boston and have been involved with Code for America here down in DC and in Boston since 2013.
I'll do my intro. Hopefully the food isn't burning yet, but this was really quick. I'm Em. I use they, them pronouns from Portland, Maine. I've organized with OpenMain on and off for quite a while, but since 2016, we've kind of been a little bit more active. And I've been on the NAC, I think since 2018. So I did 1 2-year term and 1 1-year term, both at large.
Great, thank you all. Since there are not too many of us, if anyone would like to introduce themselves who's in the audience, you can go ahead and do so. I will, I'm gonna pull up the presentation that I have here while folks are doing that. So feel free to introduce yourself and let us know who you are and where you're from.
I'll take a shot. I can tell where to start. My name is Micah Mutrix. I'm with the Code for BTV Brigade up in northern Vermont, and then with Code for America pretty much since we have had a brigade in town 5 to 6 years ago.
Hello, I'm Mike Morgan. I'm down in San Diego. I saw this on the Code for America Slack and I'm just kind of checking it out. I've been volunteering with Open San Diego for, I don't know, 9 or 10 months, something like that. And I just recently volunteered for their steering committee. So I'm just kind of trying to see what's going on.
Great, well, welcome to everybody and thank you for introducing yourselves. I will, let's see, I don't think I can see the, oh yes I can. I just found the button. I can see the chat while I'm presenting, wonderful. I am assuming that you can see a browser window that says 2021 National Advisory Council elections on it. If you cannot, please let me know. But I'm going to proceed as if you can. So tonight's agenda that we have, first we want to meet the NAC. We've done that a little bit, but we're going to hear a little bit more from them. And we're also going to, hear about why the NAC ran, what their goals are for their time on NAC, and also hear about the other NAC members who aren't on the call tonight. There have been a bunch of changes to the NAC for 2021, so we'll walk everyone through those. And then we'll talk about which brigades are eligible to field candidates. Every brigade member is eligible to vote in every election, but because we'll be splitting up between regions and large and small brigades. It is not, not every brigade can field a candidate in every cycle. And then we'll move into Q&A and discussion, although with so few people, we're able to have more of a conversation. So if things don't make sense or you have questions, feel free to jump in as you have them. So this is taken from the NAC website on the About the NAC page on the Code for America website. Some of this has changed, some of this has not, but by and large, the NAC is a representative body that is intended to be a link between the brigades and the network team / Code for America staff. I'm actually not sure if I mentioned before, I work on the network team at Code for America. I'm a senior program manager. I'm the primary brigade contact for brigades in the eastern half of the US, and my colleague Veronica Young serves the same role in the western half of the US. I'm also a member of Code for Boston, but tonight I am here in my capacity as a CFA staff member. So we'll talk a little bit about the changes, and I can provide folks with a link to a little bit more detail about the roles and responsibilities for NAC moving forward as envisioned by NAC and the network team currently. But so the members of the NAC, Embernet from OpenMain, they are here on the call, as is Thad Karowski from Code for Boston, Nina Ken from Hack for LA, Melanie Mazanik from Code for Philly, Janet Michaelis from Code for Dayton. She will be joining us a little bit later. Janet works in an ER, so we'll be able to see her in all her PPE from the ER locker room. But she will be joining us shortly. Sabra from Code for Asheville, Tariq Shepard from Code for Atlanta, Ben Trevino from Code for Hawaii, and Bonnie Wolf from Hack for LA. The folks that are listed here as at-large were elected in 2019. They serve at-large seats, so they were elected by the whole country. At-large seats are going away this year, and all of those folks, their terms are expiring. So the only sort of occupied NAC seats are our 4 regional seats. And one of the changes that you may have seen is that we're changing the 4 seats to be, or the 4 regions to be 5 regions. So Thad, Janet, Tariq, and Bonnie will be returning. I, at this point, am going to stop sharing for a moment so we can see each other a little bit more easily. And I will ask the question that I threatened to ask as we were having our planning meeting, which was to please share, for our NAC members, please share one word or one phrase that describes why you chose to run for NAC and what your goals were when you first raised your hand for this. And maybe we'll go in reverse order. Em, can you start us out? Then we'll do Thad and move to Bonnie.
Yeah, small cities was kind of what I came in with, as I don't think these really need to be real campaigns, but I do run political campaigns sometimes professionally. So I would say that's kind of what I campaigned on, or liked to talk about, is just supporting small brigades. And I don't know that there's like a magic bullet there, but that's something that I still feel pretty passionately about.
How about you,
Great.
Thad?
Yeah. So if I had to summarize my platform into a couple words, I'd say non-zero sum. I'm really enthusiastic about making sure the network and ensuring the network's more than the sum of its parts through all of our efforts on the NAC. So, thank you.
And the reason why I joined NAC was to see if we could, I mean, it's an extension essentially of what Thad said, but to see if we could really do some systematic surveying of the network to find out what its needs actually are. I felt like we were really doing a lot of anecdotal, and storytelling kind of needs research, and I wanted to do something more systematic, and we are doing that with the BOP survey. Some of you may have heard about it, and if you haven't, then you'll be hearing from us soon.
Great. Well, thank you all. At this point, I want to talk in a little bit more depth about sort of the three of your vision for NAC before we move into the specific changes to how NAC will work. Thad and Bonnie, you both talked about sort of the additive power of this network and being more than the sum of your parts, is how you put it, Thad. Can you, are there specifics or like things that inspired you to start thinking about it in that way that like gave you the passion you needed to decide to run for this?
For me, I had kind of seen how at Code for Boston on our core team, some decisions were sort of incremental changes and other decisions completely changed the way that we work together, and made the critical mass of projects come together more easily. And so I sort of saw the chance to bring some of those tricks or techniques or organizing methods to other places, and also recognize where they're coming from other places, so that everybody can benefit and move those around, if that makes any sense.
And then for me, when I joined Hack for LA, it really felt like we were creating so much stuff from scratch. And I knew that there were brigades that had a longer history than us, like Code for Boston, and had professionalized more than us. Code Beta NYC in specific ways, like around fellowships, things like that. But it didn't feel like there was like one place to go to get all that information. And so I wasn't really sure that it existed. I was kind of hoping it existed, but wasn't really sure. And then I went to a Brigade Congress and then met all the unbelievably brilliant people from around the network and thought, we just haven't collated all of the processes and practices that are effective. And we need to find a place to bring those together and highlight them, and then figure out what we don't have practices for and focus on that instead of, like there's 10 different ways you can onboard. And there's probably 20 different onboarding guides throughout the Brigade network. 10 of those are probably almost exactly the same and could have just been written once. So that idea of actually getting the network effect by sharing effectively is really core to all the work that I've been doing on the NAC. And I think, it really mirrors the conversations I've had with brigade leads and really active brigade members at Summit and Congress, is that one of the things people really love about the Code for America network is that nobody's kind of guarding their secrets about how to do things. We're all actively trying to share it with each other, and take open source, not just in software, but also in our processes and practices.
That really resonates for me. That was definitely something that made this community a lot of fun to join. When I first started coming to Code for Boston Hack Nights a few years ago. You mentioned a slightly different motivation for joining, and I know from working with you that you're often someone who ends up sort of grounding us in thinking about more than just tech, or thinking about not just tech, and thinking about sort of activism in communities. How has that played out in your time on NAC?
I think that I've ended up spending a lot of time kind of operationalizing, or maybe operationalizing isn't the right word, but people managing, or managing relationships, managing like how our meetings can be run. And I think the advocacy and things like that, I've also been able to kind of push for. With civic tech, I just feel like sometimes we're solving political problems that were created by political decisions. And I think there's a need to kind of get away from this false sense that we're not political, when we're like, you don't have to make a form easy if someone shouldn't have to fill out a form in the first place. And so I am excited. I think that we're actually finally going to be going in that direction this year. And that's kind of some of my input has been towards pushing for that. And I also think it kind of relates in some ways to small brigade things, but it might be, I don't know that others come to it with as much of a political background, but it's easier for me to know my representatives. They're not all that out of reach. They're not like famous people. And I think there's a real opportunity there to kind of bring some cool things forward that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do in a California or a Massachusetts in some ways. It can be easier. Not that it can necessarily get done, but there's hope.
Bonnie, I saw you unmute. Go ahead if you.
Yeah, I wondered if you were going to actually. I mean, I don't know if I really. I don't know if you were kind of pre-queuing a question, or that was the question about like what should the NAC be. Was that the question, or is that the next question?
It is one of the next questions. Yes, I want to talk about what it should be, and I'll give the three of you a couple minutes head start to know that I'm going to ask a similar. It doesn't have to be one word or one phrase, but a brief, concise answer about why should other folks run for NAC. So I think that, but I did want to comment on what mentioned about a lot of it being sort of operationalizing things, a lot of it being politics, a lot of it being like people and relationship management. And I do want to say, I think, so I've been at CFA since last May, so a little less than a year. But I've been aware of NAC elections for longer than that. And I think, NAC has changed pretty much every year that it has existed. And it will continue to do so. There's a big change this year, and last time around was the first time we had regions at all. So it's always a change. And so helping to shape, not just shape the network, but NAC itself and how the network interacts with Code for America headquarters and interacts with one another is one of the big things that NAC ends up doing, and I'm sure we'll continue doing. We're all learning as we go. But I think with that, I do want to move on to that question, Bonnie. What do you want NAC to be, and why should folks that took the time to join this call on their Wednesday evening, why should they stand up to run for a seat on NAC themselves?
Yeah, if I can go first, obviously burning to answer this question. I think it's interesting that you say that it's changed every year. I mean, it's hard, it's my first time on NAC. Em has been around longer than me. And also, I think that has been a volunteer longer than I have. I've only been, inside the Code for America family for 2 years. And I've only been on the NAC for, about a year now. So, there's that thing where, you show up and you're like, hey, I need to change all of these things. And you don't realize what has happened before to get you there. Not that you're trying to go backwards, but you're standing on the shoulders of the people who came before you. But there still is that, hopefully, that drive to like, we can all make this better if we just all buckle down and get it done. So I'd like to see the NAC become more an advisory body. It's called the National Advisory Council, but I don't really think we do that much advising of Code for America Network team. And I think, part of that is because we don't really seem to have the structure for it. And there's a lot of stuff like, it's a fire hose. Not to scare anybody off, but NAC is definitely a fire hose of information and opportunity to get involved in things. In addition to just kind of the normal NAC, everyday NAC duties. But I would like to see us have more of a structure for actually providing formal guidance on what the network thinks about what all the brigades think about a particular issue and what they want to see happen.
Yeah, if you love getting Slack messages from me, running and serving on NAC is a great way to get even more Slack messages from me. How about you, Thad? What do you want for NAC?
Yeah, sure. So for me, the campaign was really an important outreaching to the Northeast and other parts of the country, and really starting the things that I would be doing. I had, when I was running for NAC, I was also starting an initiative in Congress, with U.S. Congress for Summit, and we ended up having on the eve of Summit sort of a gathering on Capitol Hill, so just to kind of raise the profile of Code for America, and I think it built on that, my campaign, and what I see NAC as a whole is sort of part of that organizing, and what we've done, we put a lot of effort this iteration of the NAC into making it pretty clear how we've all spent our time over the past year or 2 years, and so we're going to make the time allotments, how we divide our time, available. I don't know if Will's already made that available, but you should be able to look at that and say, okay, I can imagine doing this much organizing on this much organizing on this much organizing. And then as you see more opportunities across the network, like Bonnie said, ideally the whoever is elected, or even if you're not elected, somebody would stand up and sort of take some of those initiatives that are just ripe to spread across the network. So welcome so much, Janet.
Yeah, I see that Janet has joined us. I want to get M's answer to that question, and then Janet, I'll hit you with all the questions we've answered so far at once.
And this, remind me, this is kind of a why people should run, or what you hope.
Yeah, what do you want the NAC to be, and why should people get involved?
Sorry, I'm getting food brought to me. I would hope that the NAC can be an effective way to connect, similar to what Thad is saying, but we, the network team, and I also now work on the network team, so I kind of have a hybrid role here, and you can't really manage a network. You have to manage a community and like create the systems for kind of allowing people to interact. And as a professional staff that's kind of creating the systems, you can't like keep an eye on everything all the time. And I think it's really important that we both recognize that we're a network and a community that has different scores of engagement and health, and there are ways that we can be better at connecting people. And I think that the NAC can serve as like a connector. I think that how we've kind of conceived of this more regional model is great, and that it's identifying more that, okay, actually I've for years wanted to send volunteers over to Code for Boston and just haven't really connected, even though I definitely know Thad now, but just having those spaces is really important. And I think that we have, back to the small brigade thing, like I'm excited by the possibility of sharing resources more, especially doing it regionally. That just feels really relevant and something that the NAC can kind of lead on in a way that staff can't always do.
Thanks, Em. So Janet, I'll give you the prompt of the things we've discussed so far, and I'd love to get your answer on them as well. First is just to introduce yourself. Second is to give us your word or phrase about why you ran for NAC in the first place. And third is to answer the question that Em sort of just answered, which is, what's your vision for the NAC, or what do you want the NAC to be, and why should other folks get involved and join that effort?
Okay, I'm Janet Michaelis. I am the co-captain of Code for Dayton and the regional rep for the former Midwest Brigade, Midwest region, now Central. I ran for NAC because I was just really enthused about the work. And were we doing the one word thing? Like, what was the word?
We started with the one word, but we made it one word-ish.
Ish, one word ish. Well, it was because of the potential for disruption that technology can bring to big systems and government systems as well. So, so I'm very much an activist and organizer. And so my vision for the NAC is that we be more activist and organized to bring more resources to our network and also help organize collaboration across brigades more effectively. And we more recently started turning a little more toward the essential political nature of what we're doing, which was part of what was driving the idea behind making the regions be more meaningful geographically. So I think that's all three questions, right?
It is. Thank you, and well put. And that's actually a great transition into talking a little bit about the changes specifically to regions. And there's a couple other changes I'll highlight. But I want to give panelists a chance to say another word or two on that, or folks who aren't panelists to ask any questions before we do move on.
Yeah, I did want to do a follow-up because I think I missed half of the question that you asked me. It was kind of like, what do I think NAC should do? And, and then was like, why you should join NAC. And I didn't answer the why you should join NAC. And I will say that I joined NAC to become more connected to the entire organization. And it's done that. Like, I felt like there was a visibility missing. And I hope that y'all will join NAC to make it more transparent. I think we want it to be transparent. We just have to figure out how to do that. And the only way things get done on NAC is people show up and say, hey, I want to champion that. Because like I said, it is a fire hose. So there's lots to do. And I think if somebody made that their mission, that would be, unbelievably helpful. And everybody around wants to do that. It's just that, we've been talking about like ways to do it, and it needs a champion.
Yeah, I think to that point, I was, as I've talked with the NAC members, both on and off this call, about NAC, I think everyone runs for NAC with a combination of sort of like inspiration and aspiration and thinking about reform. Like, there's big things you want to build and big things you want to change. And I think that, one thing that NAC helps us do, like it does help hold the network team accountable and to thinking about transparency, thinking about how we are communicating with the network and how we are communicating with the community and the 85 organizations that we exist to serve. So that, that is a part of it. So with that, I think we will move on to talk a little bit about some of the changes. So I'm going to start sharing my screen again. There we go. So what's new in 2021? As we mentioned, we are moving to be an all regional NAC. We're also changing up the region. So right now, NAC has 9 members. 4 of them were elected as regional representatives in the most recent elections. 5 of them were elected in the previous elections as at-large members, so they were elected by the network as a whole. We're adding a member and we're adding a region. So we'll have the regions are Northeast, Southeast, which Northeast existed before. Southeast was just called South, and it's a little smaller. Midwest is becoming Central. We're adding a region which is Mountains Plains, which sort of started out as Mountain West, but we realized that it sort of included a little bit more than just mountains. So we're calling it Mountains Plains. And then Pacific is essentially the states that touch the Pacific Ocean. I think that it is the 3 California, Oregon, and Washington on the West Coast, and then Alaska and Hawaii. Because we already have some currently serving NAC members, Janet being the representative now for small brigades in the Central region, Thad for large brigades in the Northeast region, Tariq, who's a member of Code for Atlanta as a large brigade representative in the Southeast region, and then Bonnie from HECRLA as a representative of the large brigades in the Pacific region. We have these 6 NAC seats open. So we have Northeast small brigades, Southeast small brigades, Central large brigades. Both small and large brigade seats are open in the Mountains Plains region, and then small brigade in the Pacific region. So I'm going to quickly run through which brigades those are in each region. Before I do that, though, I want to clarify everybody within a region is able to vote for both representatives, whether you're a member of a small brigade or a large brigade. The small and large division applies to what brigade a candidate is a member of. So if I wasn't a staff member already, I, as a member of Code for Boston, a large brigade, would not be able to run this year because it's a small brigade year. Thad is already serving in the seat for large brigades. Skip a page there. There we go. So the Northeast small brigades. I think I'm not going to read all of these out. I think you can identify if your brigade is on them, but I'll pause on each of them. So these are the small brigades in the Northeast. These are the small brigades in the Southeast that are eligible to field a candidate. Just a few large brigades in the Central region. And in fact, in every region, there are only a few large brigades. We've set it up so that in each region, roughly 1/3 of brigades are considered large and 2/3 are considered small. And we'll talk a little bit in a moment about how that distinction was made. These are the large brigades in the Mountains Plains region. The Mountains Plains region is geographically quite large, but there's a lower density of brigades in that region. The majority of states that don't have a brigade fall into the Mountains Plains region. So there's a big opportunity for growth in that area. These are the small brigades in the Mountains Plains region. And then moving on here, if this will update, there we go. These are the small brigades in the Pacific region. So anybody from those brigades would be eligible to run for a seat on NAC. And I'm going to switch over here to the NAC roles and responsibilities, which I'll read off sort of the headlines from this and talk a little bit about sort of where this document came from. This is posted, it's linked on, there's a discourse post about this, which has been linked in the Slack a few times, and I can repost this if folks want to revisit it. But we're targeting about 10 to 15 hours a month for NAC members. I think that can vary a lot depending on what time of year it is. So I think we ask more of NAC in the lead up to things like Brigade Congress. It also really varies based on who you are. If you are a person that sees things and signs up for them and wants to spend your time on them, I know that many NAC members end up spending a lot more than 10 to 15 hours per month. But that is like the benchmark that we're trying to set. So basically, you'll serve as a liaison to your region, and part of this facilitate regional conversation, you'll end up acting sort of as a team with the other representative for your region. So for example, Janet as the small region representative in the Central region, whoever's elected as the large region representative for that same region, they'll end up working pretty closely together to sort of manage these relationships together. So there's this regional conversation. Many of the regions have monthly regional calls, and we're exploring a bunch of different ways to have sort of an ongoing cohort of folks within the same region. Coordinate with NAC and the network team. So that's working with one another and working with us on staff. There's a NAC meeting every month that NAC members are expected to participate in. Supporting the CFA network-wide initiatives. This is stuff like Brigade Congress, National Day of Civic Hacking. Current NAC has also participated in a bunch of things like the sort of CFA narrative work that we've done, the theory of change work that is ongoing. So being people that we can sort of rely on to show up for things and participate in things like that. And then, of course, as we mentioned before, contribute to the functioning and development of NAC. So continue to think about how NAC itself should operate. As I said, these, and as you can see, these have some more details, and I'll go over in a moment how you can get more involved in shaping the further specifics that will come from that. But at this point, I am going to stop my screen share and ask if either our panelists have things to add or our attendees have things to ask. I can't have done that good a job of explaining everything.
Janet? Janet, do you want to speak on the regions and the divisions?
Do you mean that the small and large, like the idea has to do with density of the community in which brigade?
I think it bears mentioning in this meeting, since it's the first one where we're talking about it. Like,
Right.
how did you, what was your big brain kind of like a realization?
Oh, the evolution of this was, so this is what, the fourth election for NAC. So as they've had elections, there's been a change each time because they found out that most people, if you had an at-large election, most of the people who voted were from big cities on the coasts, and you got an overrepresentation from those high-density communities. And even though there are more brigades from less dense places, they couldn't really compete that way, the way the election was run. So we spent a lot of time hashing around about does geography matter at all? Should it all be at-large elections, and how could we find a way to balance so that we had geographic representation on the NAC, but also representation that was from different size densities of communities. So we used MSAs and spreadsheets, and a lot of other things that we tried to extrapolate to make this balance out and be fair. But we know that meetup numbers are not helpful. So after much deliberation, some of which was subjective, in the end, we decided that this would be a way we would try it this time and see if that balances out. And also, by having everyone part of a region and having us as teams, the things that we needed to do to coordinate within that region weren't falling on one person. Because we found that, you sign up for NAC with all good intentions and your life is going smoothly and it seems like it's going to be fine, and then something happens, and unless there's somebody else who can help take up that slack for you. So this is an idea that that we're trying this time, that you and your regional buddy will be figuring out what to do. And it might not work, but that's what the thinking is behind it.
Yeah, and to put a finer point on sort of how we arrived at the size distinctions, I think the regions were sort of thought about by Janet and to a smaller extent myself, playing around with some maps and seeing what made sense. But the size distinction really came from, we started, Janet started, I should give her the credit for the spreadsheet work, with identifying the population of the MSA of each brigade, and then classifying any brigade that is in an MSA with a population over 3 million as large, and any with a population under 3 million as small. We then made some adjustments, both to target roughly a third of brigades being large and 2/3 being small, to try to come a little closer to evening out the number of people that participate in each brigade, although I think it probably, still is not super accurate. And then we made some adjustments for just for sort of common sense and what we know about brigades, and those were the more subjective ones. So one, for example, that that I advocated for was that Code for Nova, so Code for Northern Virginia, is technically in Alexandria, Virginia, which is in the Washington, D.C. MSA, but the experience of the people running Code for Nova is drastically different than the experience of people running Code for DC. So we tried to make some adjustments based on that stuff, but we recognize going into this if it is imperfect, and if we had if brigade leaders all took attendance at every meetup and tracked that all, we might have a more reliable number of how many people engage with each brigade, but that's not how anyone wants to spend their time, and this is sort of the next best thing.
Totally, Will. I see there's a question from Nick. If I would love to hear your response first, Will, and then maybe we can chime in.
Yeah. So let's see. So next question is, what formal relationship does the NAC have as representing the Brigade network to the national nonprofit? What power or formal capability does the NAC have as related to the national nonprofit, if any? So the answer to the second part of your question is, in terms of a formal organizational structure relationship, there isn't one. It is not, Code for America, like many organizations, has a board of directors that our CXO, we call them, so the people with chief before their job title, report to. And they sort of are the governing body, or the people that the CEO reports to. And that's not what NAC is. I think it is a body that the network team takes seriously. It is a body that sort of arose among sort of a communication breakdown between the network and staff, and something that has worked to close that gap a bit since then. As far as operationally how we coordinate with NAC, so there's a monthly NAC meeting that the network team attends. We haven't finalized the language for this, but there's a point in the NAC roles and responsibilities document that we will be continuing to work on exactly how it's described, that talks about the NAC's ability to make proposals to the network team, that there will be a formal structure by which those proposals will be considered and heard, and a decision will be made on them. So there is that. There is the idea, although as I said, it hasn't been finalized yet. That it is a more sort of direct or more guaranteed window into the network team. The network team, which is myself and my colleagues that work with the brigades, so Veronica, CCM, and then the fellowship folks, which is Hashim, Stephen, and Filson, and then Billy Lim, who just joined us, who is working on the Get Your Refund work, who's on the call tonight. Hi, Billy.
Yes.
They and then Meredith, who's the senior director of all of it. We are the ones that the NAC primarily interacts with. One of my other pieces of work at Code for America is exploring more ways in which the volunteer network can be more substantively involved in the sort of headquarters work, as you might think about it. So we have things like Get CalFresh and Clear My Record and various other programs that the rest of the slightly over 100 staff work on, and getting volunteers more connected to those is one of the things that we work on. But the relationship is largely via the network team. Thad, you sounded like you wanted to add something there.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that one of the things that I think defines the difference between the Code for America, the nonprofit, and the NAC is that we have these close relationships through the continuous meetings, but Code for America has the same org chart, they're part of the same org chart that the rest of the organization is working under. So they have deliverables, they have goals that each employee has to kind of serve. And on NAC, we have a little bit more sensitivity to those kinds of things, and we can try to channel some of the fire hose of the network and help a few extra help connections get made across the boundary of sort of this very distributed network and the rest of the nonprofit. So there's a little bit of finagling there that I think that the NAC does. And I don't know if Em wants to say some closing remarks before they go on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's an evolving body, as we've referenced quite a couple times, and I would also welcome Jason's thoughts at some point as a former knacker, had to call you out, but yeah, it like there's already a board and we're not the group that makes decisions about how Code for America runs. We can help guide some of the direction that the network goes in, and I think there's also like an important part of like recognizing we're kind of in a place where a lot of like, what are we doing here type of questions are getting asked, and we're inviting people into that process. The theory of change work has been ongoing, and I think the polis is still live, but that's actually going to be, I believe it's its own kind of working group in the next year. But yeah, I think that we did kind of previously have ill-defined relationship in terms of like, what power does NAC have? And I think that this regional model kind of allows NAC to own some of the community building in regions. And I think that NAC plays a really important part in helping guide like where the network team focuses, what we're gonna work on, or at least like raising up issues. And but we're not at a place where the NAC votes on whether someone gets hired, or whether we do a certain thing. There are, what I want to push for, just like as kind of my role with Code for America now, is better defining where we can have more participatory process. So priority action areas that we chose last year, those are ones that are very heavily decided on by network involvement, the NAC, Brigade Congress content, decisions, like how that works. The theory of change process itself is something that is definitely like guided by network voices. And other things will pop up, National Day as well, kind of like having the committee will guide a lot of the decisions around like theme selection and things like that. But I think that's not always spelled out. It's not always clear like what processes are open, when are we able to engage? And I think there's ways that we can kind of practice what we preach. I feel a lot of that. Like if we want to have open governance, I think there are ways we can apply some of that participatory model to what we're doing here. So I hope you all consider running. It is a lot of work. Definitely like see if you have the time to commit. And if you do, like we really need passionate, smart people who are down to put in the time. And yeah, thank you for coming.
Thanks, Em. I'll sort of piggyback on that very briefly, which is just to mention, Em had mentioned sort of like hiring decisions and stuff. I will mention that when I was in the process of getting a job here, one of the interviews I did was with Melanie Mazanek, who's one of our NAC co-chairs. I, at the time, was not internal to the CFA organization, so I don't know where her feedback weighed on the decision-making chart. But NAC was involved in some of that, at least from the start. And I'll also say that for my own personal goals, both like formal goals that I set quarterly with my manager and with my colleagues, and also just like why I care about this job and why I want to be here. I really think that Code for America headquarters does a lot of cool stuff, and it is stuff that should be happening in every state and could be happening in every state. And so for NAC members and frankly for non-NAC members, like if there are ideas that people have of how to bring the programs and products that our full-time staff teams are working on closer to the network, I will be a champion for all that stuff. I really want to see that gap close and see us operate as one big organization with a big community, not one big organization with an even bigger community sort of tangentially attached to it. Bonnie, you looked like you had something to add.
Yeah, I know there's been, just so you know, like, we're not a unified body. We do have like vociferous debates, like, a couple of people would get together and discuss something to try to get some consensus and then bring it back to the rest of the body. I think we should do more of that. Actually, I think it's fairly effective versus somebody kind of going it alone, making a proposal, and then because sometimes things are moving so fast, there's not time for a lot of dialogue there's definitely not time for dialogue during the once a month meetings. So that gets me to the thing that we most often disagree about, which is how much time this takes per month. So notice that Will said 10 to 15, because that's what we agreed upon, but you should talk to individual NAC members and get their feedback. And we'll nicely put a nice wrap around that, unless you'd like to do more. But for instance, just to put this work together 1 month, we blew through that 15 hours within 2 weeks. And then there were still emails coming if you were part of the people who were working on that, on that working group, but you'd already blew through your 15 hours. So if you wanted to stay involved, you had to commit more hours to stay involved. And the decision really gets made at the end of the conversation, not just, input happens at the beginning. So I would say that, if you do decide to do it, figure out like where it fits into your life and how much you can take on. And there are people who work on something very, very specific on NAC, and that's where they put their time. There are other people who participate in lots of different things, wanting to weigh in on every issue. You have to decide what's worth it for you. It is a fire hose, but it's a wonderful fire hose. I wish we had a NAC that was twice as big in labor. And I think some of the extra positions that we're now going to have open because of the regional spot is actually going to help us get more done. It's also going to make other things harder, but like coming to a consensus potentially. But many hands make light work. So, thanks, Will.
Janet, do you want to say some last words before we close?
No, I thought I saw Jason's hand up though.
Yeah, I if I could, I just wanted to offer my high-level perspective for Nick's question on the relationship between the NAC and Code for America. And I 3 words come to mind. One is a consultation, so they consult the NAC on certain matters. The other one is influence, where we can kind of channel the energy and the brain power of the at-large brigade network through the NAC. And then ultimately, third is just like a feedback loop of, when CFA is making changes, giving NAC a preview and kind of doing a litmus test and acting as that feedback loop for the network. So that's my high level perspective.
Thanks, Jason. Okay, so if I'll mention, we're just about at the top of the hour, so I'll quickly mention how folks can get even more involved if this wasn't enough for you, and then we can keep it open if other folks have questions. But there is a form live right now that you can use to declare yourself as a candidate for NAC. It was linked in there was a Sparks newsletter that went out last week, and I believe it is also in the discourse post. I will post a link to that on Slack as soon as I close this call, so it'll be fresh. The timeline for that, the candidate declaration period is currently open. It will close at the end of the day on February 14th, which is a Sunday, so that and is also Valentine's Day, because the voting will open on February 15th, which is a holiday, which is President's Day. But it opens on the 15th, and the voting will stay open until March 15th. That is also a Monday, so there will be a month of declaration, a month of voting, and throughout the voting time, there will be campaigning from the candidates. And then we'll announce the results of the election the following the Friday of that week. So I think that's the 19th. Other than that, join the NAC_elections Slack channel. That's where a lot of the planning stuff will be happening, especially if you are, especially if you're interested in serving on the working group to do some of the like election management and make some of the decisions about how the election will be run. I don't think we have a formal time for those yet, but those I will attempt to get that meeting scheduled and posted by tomorrow. So that folks can join that. And then Bonnie made a very good point. Reach out to NAC members, talk to them about their experience, talk to them about, you know, things that matter to you specifically, and to get sort of a more direct, in-depth take than we're able to do in an hour with this group. But with that, does anybody else have questions or closing thoughts? Great. Well, thank you all so much. I hope to see many of your names roll into my little Google form of intended NAC candidates, and I hope you all have a great rest of your Wednesday. Oh, go ahead, Bonnie.
Well, I do have one more thing to say. I would like to point out that all of the people who showed up from the NAC to talk to y'all were all white. And so if you're not going to run, if you, the person who's coming to this meeting, is not going to run, please think about reaching out so that we can have a more diverse group. We have a diverse NAC, but it could be more diverse. So yeah, please help us with that. Please spread the word about the election, whether you're running or not.
That's a really good point, Bonnie, and that is something I was actually just discussing with Meredith, the senior director, today. Is you know, we've been starting to develop some of our participation goals for candidates and for voters, and a big part of that is getting a NAC that is not all white, and I think it is a little bit of a, you know, NAC is not currently all white, although you know, we could always be better. But that is both a implicit but also a formal goal of the NAC elections, is to make sure that we are overrepresenting people that are often left out of the tech industry, which is where a lot of the people who show up to these things come from. And yeah, if you have a person in your brigade that you look at and you see a leader, bug them to run, even if you're not going to run yourself.
Can I ask one question? What's the channel that you could, I mean, if someone, this is kind of overwhelming to me, I'm kind of new and I don't want to sound like a complete idiot.
No worries.
But are you guys more interested in the top down from the mothership, which is CFA, to the volunteers in the brigade, so it's such that you're harmonizing the priority action areas, you're, you know, coming up with stuff like that and aligning with the projects I see on the CFA site? Or are you trying to come bottom up from individual brigades that are working, you know, a problem area that could work in a demographic, in a geography, to kind of harmonize? Like I go look at, I'm San Diego, I go look at Hack for LA, and there's a gazillion projects there. I don't quite see that in San Diego. I've been doing some things with Code for Atlanta because they have a cool project that they're working on that's trying to come up with using EPA data to do sustainable systems. So they're going to have something in the fall. So I'm trying to say, can we put together a project in San Diego or SoCal that takes advantage of our regional information about industries and life cycles and all that kind of jazz to leverage what they're doing? So I'm volunteering over there a little bit. I'm going to try to convince them to give a pitch to us. You know, is that what you're trying to do with the regions? It's a little confusing to me when that there's the network and there's the organization and there's lots of does in here. Sorry. We'll come across
I can start to answer that, but it sounded like you might have something to add in there. Do you?
Well, I mean, the Congress work, like there's no way to like slice and dice it. The region is just it's just to make sure that happens. It's not like an exclusive thing. So yeah, we're going to work across these boundaries no matter what. It's just a part of it. So the answer to your question is yes. both of those things.
Yes,
We're organizers. We're working top down and bottom up to whatever extent we think is needed, I think, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I will also mention that there was some discussion as we were coming up with the regions that in many cases, small brigades have more in common with one another than brigades that happen to be in the same time zone. And so there was at one point a discussion of doing away with regions altogether. And I think that one of the reasons that we stuck with regions is that we often as a country just think of ourselves as regions. I live in New England. I mean, I don't like go to Rhode Island that much, even though it's a 45-minute drive from where I live, but like I still think of myself as living in New England. And so it like is natural to connect with people in your same region. But yeah, I mean, there's cross-country collaboration on a lot of different things. As you mentioned, Mike. Janet, go ahead.
Yeah, so the idea is for us to have people on the NAC from different parts of the country and different sizes of brigades. And if there's a way that you can use those regional interregional connections to get something done politically, maybe like within your state, we have 3 brigades in our state. That's fine, but not obligatory. And working across brigades across the country is great.
To answer the part of your question, Mike, I'm posting a link in the Slack, excuse me, to the Slack in the Zoom chat. Oh yeah, you should be able to get that. That will take you to the NAC elections channel. It's NAC_elections. I will say that for any big news, we'll also cross post in the brigade channel as well. Other questions?
Well, and if I may, Michael, I know it is confusing, like the whole priority action areas, like how much should that drive what our local brigade does? And as you said, Hack4Lay has like a zillion projects. We do. We're trying to align on the UN sustainability goals, and that we're filling out in project areas where we're not currently don't have things represented. And we haven't really in the past tried to align on the priority action areas necessarily. Sometimes we already had projects in those areas, but I think that communication between the small brigades and Code for America and the big brigades and Code for America and with each other, inter-brigade is really key to figuring out, well, how can the priority action areas work really effectively to drive development at the brigade level? Should they do that? Is that helpful? I mean, these are the kind of questions we're trying to address on the NAC. Figuring out if something is working, if it's not working, how could it work? Should it be jettisoned entirely? Should we do something different? We just had a whole huge conversation about priority action areas and communicating those and what we should do with old ones, since some brigades will have started projects already but not completed them that are in those priority action areas from 2020. So this is definitely, the NAC is where the guidance from the brigades meets the network team.
And I would find that in that Slack. I mean, there was this thing that was, I don't know, something I could vote on where I'd get 140 characters and there'd be little snippets and I'd vote, yeah, there's a yes and no, and I don't care kind of a category, but I can't find them anymore. And there were some good ones. I don't know, where do I go to find them?
I think you're referring to the theory of change work.
There you go. Whatever it was fun to read, but then the next day I'm going, I like that one. Where is it?
It moves fast. I know, Thad, you were involved in that. Is there a public channel that you can find that stuff in?
Good question. I don't know that we have made a public channel for that, but the Polis, I think, is what you're referring to, right? Yeah. And
I think so,
would you like the link to it again? I'll send it on Slack.
So, then can I search it? How do I do it? I mean, it was hard to navigate with me, except when I voted. There was a link there that said, you got 10 things you can vote on, click, 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 and I vote them. And then I can't find those 10 things anymore.
So they kind of go in the background once you voted, and then you only see the new ones.
How do I get to the background?
there's a report you can look at that has everyone's
Oh.
responses, and I'll send that too.
Perfect.
I think it's linked from that page, so you can just browse that and see where you stand in with around every.
So are you using that kind of input to come up with the next level of priority action areas?
That's out. The NAC members are welcome on that committee, but right now it's called the Theory of Change Committee, and we are using the polis. We started the polis for that purpose. So Ben Trevino from Hawaii, Janet, and 4 or 5 other folks from around the country, San Jose, Nashville, and 1 other brigade have been really active on that. And so yes, we're taking that input and trying to figure out who the constituencies are that need to be represented in the next series of change.
Okay.
So
Micah,
thank you
did I
so much for
see-
participating.
Micah, did I see you unmute for a moment?
Yeah, if there's time for a question here, I was very happy to hear you, Will, mention that there is some interest or degree of thought from Code for America, the HQ or other, about how project work can be how the brigades can sort of cooperate with that. You know, that's been a thing for years, right? Everybody assumes that oh well, we'll just have our brigade like implement clear my record here, and it's not that simple. But the idea that there's currently some energy moving that direction is very exciting. I would just be interested to hear a little more where that stands. If there have been, I wasn't excited, inspired by the expungement clear my record workshops that David and folks ran recently. Getting to that sort of insight from a brigade perspective into the CFA project was very cool. Is this an ongoing thing, and what might that sort of look like? Or is it just...
Yeah, definitely. And the your words about the clear my record stuff hit close to home as a former co-lead on the Clear My Record project in Boston. It definitely is not something that you can just rubber stamp on every state. So we have been running since before I started Code for America, before I joined staff here. We have been running these integration pilots. So the first one was the Get Your Refund work, which was the earned income tax credit, volunteer income tax assistance thing, which Billy, who was on the call recently, just came on as a full-time organizer for that project going forward. That was the first one. We have looked at a bunch of different options for more projects that we can like make a concerted effort to involve the network in our sort of headquarters, like full-time staff projects. The one that I know that is on the horizon that I am involved in is less of a nationwide effort than the Get Your Refund project was, but it is working with the state of Pennsylvania on their SNAP and other integrated benefits application process. So I'll be working in tandem with our staff, advising the state on how to improve their like SNAP intake process, and then working with Brigade volunteers in parallel to work with the like sister organizations and the organizations that are like helping folks sign up for SNAP. But yeah, I mean, we're always looking for new ways to involve volunteers in a substantive way in some of that headquarters work, and you know, hopefully that will also eventually lead to being able to have volunteers bring headquarters work to their own states. I think that part of it is probably a little ways off, but yeah, I mean, it is doing stuff like that has been like one of my formal quarterly goals since I started. And definitely like always looking for ideas of ways that we can bring those two groups closer together.
Sorry, I kind of missed the question I was responding. Did anyone else want to respond?
The question was around the network and volunteers working more closely on staff-led projects. So stuff like get your refunds and a couple other projects that are
Yeah,
in the
definitely
pipeline.
the one that Billy's on, the tax refund. I think largely because of NAC, I really got Boston in tow to dip in that, and we didn't. It was the Massachusetts piece of that didn't grow as much this last year as it could, but we're hoping next year it will. So now we have the relationships to build that. So yeah, I totally think that the NAC can help that happen.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, I am reachable. I am at Will on Slack or wpfeffer@codeforamerica.org. I assume you have all received at least one email from me recently, so you can respond to that one. But please get in touch if you have any other questions. Please get in touch with a NAC member if it is a question you would prefer to ask one of them. And thank you all for coming. Please run for the NAC. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks, Will. Bye, everybody.